Hello and Happy New Year. This is Kayla coming in from Bali, and today I'm excited to invite on Dana from Austin, Texas, to chat to us about a little bit of a different approach to entering into 2021. So I'll just chime her in right now, and we can get right into it.
I'm
So
so lame.
when, re- when people replay this, what they won't know, or what we're did an intro for Dana and everything, and then we couldn't figure out how to get her on because she was trying to do it from her PC, and I was like, okay,
Because I'm
rewind.
not that tech savvy. It may seem like I am, but I really am not.
Yeah. Oh. Cool. So I haven't introed you yet, but what I do want to start with for the people that kind of one Happy New Year.
Thank you. You too.
We made it. Um, and the reason that I invited you on is because, like, not only are you a devoted Passion Pilgrim follower, and we've become, there is an element of that I really want to speak to because you've actually like made me feel really special because you've made me feel really seen and heard just by being engaged. Yeah. And so, that's the whole point of like this thing too, is I want to return the favor and help you to be seen and heard because you're a regular gal that, doesn't have a million followers on Instagram, but the way that you've been able to impact my life and just the engagement that you've had in our online community has actually been really substantial. And what I like to do is celebrate like all people from all walks of life. And your story when you shared it to me was really cool because I think a lot of people can really relate. And then the reason I wanted to invite you on today for the New Year is once you didn't punk out like you said.
Because I totally would have been like, oh, school's back in session. I've got so much going on. Maybe we should just put this off.
Yeah, let's just do it now. And the other reason is because of your approach to 2021. I'm kind of the person that likes to color outside the lines a little bit and go against the grain. And so how's my Wi-Fi for you, by the way?
Oh, you're fine.
Okay, cool. Because you keep like doing the circle thing, but I just wanted to make sure it was okay. I can still hear you though. Yeah, the one thing that I love about your approach to 2021 is it goes against the grain for everything that we've seen in previous years. And I've already seen, and not negating what people are doing, like really entering 2021 with a bang and having all their courses and offerings. That's great because everybody's going to have a different opinion. I'm just going to share mine and the fact that you also, we share opinions. And so take it or leave it to the people that are watching. But I love that you're approaching the year with a slower pace and setting the pace as that and giving yourself room to grow from there. And really,
I mean, it's like a buffet, right? Take what you want, take what you don't. Hit the buffet like really fast and hard, or like really loosen your belt and take time. So
I love that because I think we know, like I'm kind of a go big or go home person. And yeah, I usually am dying on the couch after a buffet because my plate is like this big and then I wonder why I'm full and overwhelmed, and I think a lot of people can really resonate with that. And so we'll get into more about like kind of what led you to approaching this year differently. And also with all the shifts that have been going on in 2020, I think it's a beautiful year to approach 2021 a little bit differently. And
definitely.
yeah, and just to tell people a little bit about who you are, what I gather from you is you're just deeply deep and creative, and you're a devoted leader, really. Like you're a single mother of two. You're really close with your family. You're a school teacher. Like you're really committed to service, and you're really committed to having these deep connections with people, which I think is why you've stood out so much on this platform. So you're just all around good shit.
I like that. This episode is going to be called Good-ish. So I'm like the fertilizer manure.
Yeah. And I love that PC because you're a school teacher. So
like offline, would say it the regular way, but I don't want any kids to be like, oh, Miss Thompson said the bad words on the internet.
I love that. I don't even have that bone in my body, so I'll try to keep it down a little bit.
Oh, you're fine. You say what you need to say.
So yeah, basically that's all I got is you're special, and I wanted to introduce you to people. And when I read your bio and just like learning about your life story, it was like I felt like I was reading a novel. One, because you're an amazing writer.
Thank you.
And two, because it was like very like yeah. And then I went to London, and then I had a
I know. I always like drop life bombs like that. Like it's not a big deal.
No, because like that is the drama of our lives, you know, like you can fall in love with your life, and the way that you were describing your life was so amazing. And you know, I think that your ability to turn something that seems so regular to you so interesting to the reader is really powerful. So we've kind of already touched on like a whole bunch of different topics, but I wanted to start with, you know, let's start with where we're at right now, which is the new, and let's start with the fact that you're entering it more slowly. And I just want to know, like, if you could sum up kind of 2021, what got you to the point of really getting to this place of like, okay, I'm just gonna.
So when the pandemic started here, like really got to be a big, oh crap, like we're going to have to deal with this. Here in Texas, we had just started spring break. So we're going to be off for a week. And going into it, I was like, we're not going back to school after this week of vacation. It's not going to happen. There's just no way. And that's exactly what happened. And for me, it was complete pulling the rug right underneath me, because life is just go, 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 do, do, do. And there's not really much time to really like think about that. And like you kind of just, well, I mean, you can think about it a whole lot, but that wasn't at all my approach. It was just like after one task is the next one. After one problem, it's the next one. And I never really took time to process through any of that stuff. And really, all it was just doing was snowballing and putting a whole lot of weight on me that I felt once everything slowed down. So just that realization that there were some changes personally that I needed to make in my life in order to live it fully and to really find joy within my circumstances. Like you said, my life is pretty darn regular. Like there have been some pretty amazing things that have happened. I mean, I grew up in South Louisiana. My parents divorced when I was like 12 or 13. Lived with a single mom, went off to college as far away as I possibly could.
Yeah.
So I went to Columbia University in New York, lived there for 4 years. Then after that, realized that I didn't want to be so far away from home, came back to Austin, and I was like, crap, what am I going to do now? Like, I don't want to be a nomad. I don't want to be, you know, this grand designer and live this luxurious life. I want it to be pretty regular. I mean, life is exciting. It doesn't have to be glitz and glamour. But then just going through my own cycle, leading me to where I am right now, there were just things that weren't sitting well with me and aspects of my life that I didn't want to live it that way. So just a conscious choice for me to really be reflective, to look at where I was, how I got there, and how I was going to make it different.
Sounds easy. Tell me about what actually.
No, that wasn't easy. I mean, you get so used to living your life in a certain way, even if it's completely opposite from your core being. And it's hard to break out of that. And it really took a lot of me questioning why I'm doing with this and coming up with some hard answers that I didn't necessarily like, and had to, you know, well, what are you going to do about it? Nobody's going to fix this for you. What are you going to do? So that's where I am now. And part of what I'm going to do is say no. Like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to live this way. Um, Granted, there are some things that I can't just like, I'm not just going to like pack up my kids and be like, deuces, Texas. Like, I
Yeah.
love it here. I love the people here. But, you know, like what aspects of this lifestyle are working for us, are going to continue to work for us. And then also feed myself as just Dana, not as a mother, not as a teacher, not as a daughter. Like, what do I want? Like, it's time for me to really be selfish. And from that selfishness is going to come more selfless service.
Yeah, cool. And I want to actually go deeper into that because, so one thing I can't relate on is the fact that you're a mother, because I don't have kids, but I do have a devoted mother. And
Your mom seems really cool.
yeah, rad, and she really is devoted, you know what I mean? And I
Mm-hmm.
see this level of devotion in you. Like, your kids are around, I know that they are first, and then you've got a whole classroom of kids too, and you're a very selfless person. And
Oh,
so
granted, they're not here right now. My mom took them out. I was like, y'all
yeah.
gotta deuce.
But like, you're a super selfless person kind of by design. Like, you're soft and mushy on the inside, you know? And I think that there's a lot of moms out there that are like, oh yeah, it must be nice to have your own time, or like, but where do I start? Because you know, the one thing that has scared me from actually having kids is like, dude, like, it's a fucking commitment, you know? Like,
Oh, and it's a lifelong commitment. Like, you can testify, like, your mom is still equally devoted right now to you as she was when you were a child, when you were an infant. Like, it's the
yeah,
choice that you're going to make for the rest of your lives together, you know? And
yeah,
unless you're adopting, you don't get to choose who your kids are.
yeah. Totally. And so, I, you know, I bet you there's a lot of moms and or teachers, like people that are really in service to the little guys in the world. And, you know, the people that are building our future, you know, these people that are looking at us for support and everything, and then the amount of weight that can maybe be on us for that. And I know that you're like deep in process right now, but for people who are also craving to be more selfish, but also have all of this responsibility, like, I'd love for you to just go deeper into what your experience with navigating that is, especially in the inner workings of your mind when you're making decisions that maybe are different from the usual.
So, the first thing that I've had to come to terms with is that um, the reality isn't going to look like the fantasy. So, no, as much as I want to, I can't just like shirk all responsibilities and come be in Bali for a month, you know, as much as I would love to. Um, but the freedom that I'm seeking, how can I get glimpses of that in what's happening right now? So it's first of all, it's okay for me to say no, especially to my children, and for them to see me as an individual. So, like, no, I'm not coming out tonight. I have a prior engagement. There's something that mommy is doing because she wants to, one.
Yeah,
And then they can look at this later and be like, whoa, hey, my mom does do other stuff, you know, and then honor that when I say, hey, I'm busy and this is what I'm doing. So the answer to this unnecessary need most of the time is going
yeah,
to be no. And now you understand why. And then that aspect of no, I can take that, I can apply it to work if necessary. I can apply that to other relationships that maybe were a little too time consuming, that didn't give me the movement that I really need.
cool. And
So,
so
no is a complete sentence. And it doesn't require an explanation.
I love that so much. And I love what you said about, I wrote it down, the exact thing. The reality isn't going to look like the fantasy. I think that especially with the online world, especially with the filters and photos and poetic descriptions of an experience, aside from the raw nature of like face-to-face contact that we're actually a little bit lacking right now,
Mm-hmm.
really easy to get lost in this cloud, literally, of the online world. And whatever fantasy occurs there, it's not the complete truth. You know, even when you go watch a movie, it's not the complete truth. It's an hour that's depicting a timeline that you don't see the dude take a shit and the girl walk in.
Even if it's a documentary, right? There's some aspect
Yeah.
of fiction, of interpretation that's going to happen with that story. It's not fact, all of it. There is some glamorizing of it.
Yeah.
And life is like that too.
And so tell me about, because you are, you took theater in school, right? Like that's what you're in college.
I did, but I was not an actor.
But
when I had to take those classes, I was always like the person in the back of the class. And then when we'd have to get up, you know, and direct or do projects, everybody was like, why are you always in the back of the class? You should be in the front of the class. But yeah, I majored in theater. My focus was costume design. So I thought I was going to be a costume designer and design for wonderful historical films and, you know, hop from New York to LA. And that felt miserable once I started to head down that road.
So tell me about how you learned this truth that the reality isn't going to be like the fantasy, because that just seems like case in point. You had all these big ideas, you went and pursued them. It turned out to be different. And so now in your life that you've done that so many times, you know, like that's what happens, is we find out kind of where the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Was there this truth of like the reality isn't going to be like the fantasy? Like, do you remember a specific time when you actually like really learned that?
I would say, you know, trying to find some kind of stable job at the end of college in 2004, and realizing that if I stayed in New York, it was going to be probably in an apartment share, living in a room the size of a shoebox, when I could just come back to Texas. Well, not even back to Texas, because I'm not even from Texas. So moved to Texas to, one, be closer to family, but then to, my older sister had moved here. So to have, you know, a connection in a place that I really liked, fell in love with Austin the first time that I visited her here. But just to understand that I could still have that aspect of creation and that relationship to the arts that I found very fulfilling, but I didn't have to sacrifice comfort or my happiness, really, because I knew that if I stayed in New York and lived that way, I was going to be miserable. Like, it was great for a while, but I think the entire 4 years that I lived there, I loved it so much because I was in a city filled with people, so I felt like I was connected, but I could totally hide.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah, especially when you're somebody that kind of like recharges on your own as well. It's so nice to kind of like have the like social nature of the buzzing, to like actually be anonymous is really, really nice. So I love what you said about, I guess, finding the balance. And because like we'll have this idea, and so you had this grandiose idea to move to New York to do this thing, and then maybe you'd be popping from this, and like that's the dream, and valid and great and whatever. And then you got there and you realized that you wanted to do something different, but actually you weren't doing something different. You just you kind of like shifted gears to a similar aspect. What came up for me when you were talking about that is really the way we walk down a path, and then the ability that you had within yourself to then change course a little bit, because you could have very well done the damn thing and, you know, done all of that.
Oh,
and you would...
I would have been a kick-ass costume designer.
Okay? Yeah.
Your girl's got some skills. Not to toot my own horn or anything, but I mean, I was going to places in the fashion district, shopping fabrics, learning how to drape. I mean, one of the first schools that I looked at was FIT, and funny story. So when my older sister and I got there to visit, a course must have just finished, and like, imagine like you're watching a movie, like seriously, this is how I think in film.
Yeah.
And the doors open and everyone floods out and they're all, you know, wearing their New York clothes. They're glamorous, wearing black. People are pale, you know, they're coming out,
Yeah.
they're popping cigs. And here I am in like this totally cool outfit, right? But it's totally like vintage, like finds. And they all come out and I looked at her and I looked at them and I was like, I'm good. And she was like, what? I was like, I'm good. I don't want to do this. And she was like, we didn't even go like sit in on a class or talk to anyone. We've got a meeting with financial aid. I was like, let's go to that museum instead. Like I knew that I didn't want it. So.
And so what inside of you made you trust your intuition at that point so easily?
I feel like I was still at a place where I was in tune to gut instinct and really listening to myself. And as I've grown and life has gotten more boring, quote unquote, because it really isn't, I've stopped listening to that. And this past year has been a process of really relearning. And instead of looking for answers or guidance elsewhere, to really tune back into that gut feeling, that instinct, and listen to myself. Like, I have all the answers that I need. I'm smart. I'm capable. I've got common sense. I know what's right and what's wrong for me, and I don't need to listen to anybody else to know that.
Beautiful. And I think that's a really common story for a lot of people is like, you know, after that point, then you like had some kids and like, you know, got a job and, you know, things.
No, I had some kids and then I was like, maybe I don't know what's right for me.
Yeah. So tell me about, I just like, I think about like the process of like lost and found and lost and found and lost and found that we flutter through, throughout our life. And I want to know kind of what your journey was with that. So like, what kind of made you feel lost? And then, you know, this year you talked about how you're really starting to like tune back into yourself again. What made you come back home?
Noise. Always feeling like I had somebody else's opinions, whether it's because of something that I saw or something that I read, or even something that someone, as much as I love them and I value their opinions and their thoughts, told me. And you get so bogged down with all of those outside influences. And granted, sometimes they're needed. It's necessary. Sometimes we are ostriches and need to get our heads out of the sand, but for the most part, all the answers that we need, we have. And even sometimes you have to turn off your own voice and be like, hey, be quiet here. I'm talking, you know, put a little Kamala Harris on them. I'm speaking.
So how do you do that? Like, tell me about some more like tangible ways. Because yeah, like you're a mom, you've got a job, you know, you seem to be pretty active on social media. You know, you're very like connected with the world at a lot of times. So you have a lot of stimulation coursing through you a lot of the time. And so how do you create that space to listen?
Sometimes
From one
it's
introvert to another, like, let me know.
sometimes it's very tangible. Like I have my younger sister a lot. I'll be like, hey, Jana, I need you to go change my social media password so I can't get on. And she'll be like, what? And she's so used to it now. She's like, okay, are you working on something? You got some stuff you need to think about, you know? And so she's like, okay. So it's literally I have to delete something or I have to have her change a password. I cut off access until I'm ready to be involved and not influenced. I do journal, so I write a lot, and a lot of times it comes from something I read or like now that I'm doing meditative practices more frequently, it'll be, you know, like a little light bulb that'll go off and then I'll write about it. I do dream a whole lot and I don't always remember them when they happen, but I'll wake up in the middle of the night, write something down, and then I'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm totally arguing with myself, left brain and right brain. And that's what all that weird stuff last night was, you know? So just finding space and quiet for me really to tune into myself so that I hear, I see. And even though I'm being bombarded by all of this other media, that it's not going to affect the truth that I have. So that's what works for me. Like, I'm not going to escape, you know, I am connected and I like that, but I also have the freedom to pause the brakes.
Yeah, and I love what you keep saying. Like, you talk a lot about boundaries since kind of the beginning of this conversation. You've talked
Mm-hmm.
about, I mean, you have a very grounded element to you too. Like, yeah, it's not all fantasy. Like, there's also the truth, and like, yeah, it hasn't always been easy, but like, here I am. And so you have this like grounded positivity, and then also you've talked about boundaries with your kids, and now you're talking about boundaries with yourself and boundaries with your job and all that kind of stuff. And then I love what you're talking about with writing, because I know that you're kind of.
You've seen my journals.
Who wants to know? It's like the prettiest thing I've ever seen. It's like so minimalist and neat.
Let me see. I might have one right
like,
here.
with the perfectionism ringer, I know it, and it's so beautiful because your journals are like this beautiful way of like, they're so simple because you've like, by the time the pen hits the paper, are you getting your journals?
Yeah, this is one of my new ones, my Christmassy one.
No.
It's one of the dotted ones, so it's got the straight lines for me. So,
awesome. Yeah, it's so pretty. It's like, I don't know, I love stationery. So, yeah, I love the way that you tend to like let things boil down and simplify. And, and also you have started like a writing kind of, or you're allowing a writing project to marinate. I don't know if you've started it yet, but you've
kind of, sort of. So, like, I have the idea, and I was like, I need to schedule stuff so that, one, I don't punk out. But I should have listened to myself, because when I was doing it, I was like, you shouldn't do that. You're not going to be ready in the way that you want to be ready, and not because you're not focused on it and putting the time in, because of the outcome that you want from this. And you need to plant the seed and really let it, get to ground and make those roots before you expect some growth from that. So it's still a work in progress. I have, people who are looking at it who will be interested, but really it's more than just about a writing project. Like, I've got a big idea for this thing. And it really is going to be focused on helping people to tap into their own creativity, even amongst the norm, like when you think you don't have the time, like, you are the expert. Okay, you write, you make things, like, you take photos. These are all wonderful creative outlets of expression. So what do you know that you would love to share with other people that can be impactful for them in some ways, and then to help you grow as an individual and grow in your craft? So
I love that. And so what makes you want to give this to people? How come it's affected you so deeply that you want to create a movement with it?
because there's an aspect of losing ourselves as we become adults if we're not careful, and we lose that vision. And creativity is a muse. If you don't use it, like, she's gonna go find somebody else.
Yeah.
And once you're ready to be like, hey, I got time for you, she'll be like, I waited all these years and now I'm over here hanging out with this dude. Okay. So, like, really to keep your gears oiled, even if it's not gonna be some huge platform, or like, you're not gonna go publish something, or whatever, but just for yourself. How can you stay connected to that spark to keep that flame going?
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you say just for yourself, because I think there's so much these days that the dreams have to be grandiose, the vision has to be grandiose. Like,
right, that there has to be some big outcome from it.
We we get a glimpse of healing and we want to then heal the world. I mean, I'm definitely guilty of that, like a thousand times over, you know, like I signed up for a breathwork training after my first class, and albeit I'm a great breathwork facilitator and I
Yeah,
love
you are.
and I love doing it, but I'm still, you know, I have now stepped back in a way that I'm not so full on with it. I'm not doing it every week. I do it, I have boundaries with it, and I create space to then give to myself, and also space that I'm not going to fill, like, where, yeah, that's where the magic happens. And then that's where the creativity happens, because when I was focusing on breath work all the time, like nobody was talking about mala beads, you know? And that's the thing that, like, creatively speaking,
That's your heartbeat.
it's really my heartbeat. And it's funny because I love breath work so much, but there needs to be a balance with it because it is so airy, and mala beads and that creative thing is really, really grounding. And so back to you, because you seem to me like you're quite a grounded person, and here you are wanting to connect people with actually physical pen on paper, like, you know, like this is in front of you and we're going to make it real and be creative. So yeah, it's amazing.
I mean, we all have aspects of that fire, that water, that earth, that air, you know, but you have to take those different modalities, and I'm gonna go back to the buffet. Like, take what you need when you need it, and then leave the rest of it alone when you don't.
Yeah, cool. I love that. I want to ask you just like a straight cut to the jugular.
Go for it. I love it when you do this in your conversations, and I'm like, ooh, they're gonna get it. My turn in the hot seat.
In your entire life, what's your biggest failure and what did you learn from it?
Oh man, relationships. I
Yeah.
suck at relationships.
Okay.
I am the worst.
And it's funny that you say that because you are so giving and you're so good at connecting.
It's because when I haven't come to the realization until very recently that I'm a person who I am not made to prescribe to. You can make it work with anyone. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I think that works for a lot of people. But for me, there's a lot of core things that are going to have to tick off for me in order to develop a really conscious partnership. And spirituality is one, not religion, spirituality, connection, having a passion for people, and wanting to do a service for the greater good. That's important for me. Some aspect of family, and that can be family that you choose. It can be your birth family. It can be the family that you want to build. But really, ultimately, I've realized that I'm looking for partnership. I want someone who will leave me alone for the rest of my life, kind of, sort of.
Okay.
Who, like, we can inhabit the same space, and we can both have our passions and support each other in that, and really be invested in individual and growth as a pair.
Yeah.
Like, that is something that is really important to me. So I don't envision that as being, and like, it's a slow growth too. So it can be, I'm going to speak, oh, he's going to kill me. Like, I have been dating someone very casually for a while. And there's potential there. I don't know where that potential is going to lead. But like, I can see the path. And if we're both invested in trying, then this partnership is going to work out for both of us. And it'll work out for our own personal good, and good for the family that we build, for the families that we have, and for our communities. So
Yeah, cool. And so why do you think you seem to have a really good grasp on your relationships and your thought process and your needs and your like
Because
your
there's no attachment. Like,
okay.
I'm not expecting for him to fix anything for me. Like, life has been hard. I am a mother of 2 kids. I don't expect him to come into those relationships and solve things that have happened. That stuff has all happened, but it's all led me here to this present, to this now. Yeah.
And so why do you think you failed at relationships?
First off, because I've held back, that
You felt
I haven't been as open as I have been now,
okay.
that I've had expectations that, although unrealistic, like, you can't into in a relationship with those expectations, and then when they aren't met, lie to yourself about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So ultimately, like, granted, I dated some real douchey dudes. So, I've been emotionally unavailable and therefore chose people who were emotionally unavailable, but expecting this relationship that I wanted, but in a really, really, it wasn't going to happen that way.
Yeah, I love your ability to just like look in the mirror and kind of say it how it is because yeah, I mean that's where everything starts and that seems to be like your big not that you've never done that in the past because it sounds like what I gather from you is you've been doing that the whole damn time. It's just about committing to like continuing again and again and again. And it's like that creativity you were talking about how you have to flex that muscle. And so you're looking in the mirror, you're like, oh, hey girl, what's up? Like, I see you really loud and clear right now because
Yeah, and like the whole time I'm looking at myself doing this and being like, mm-mm.
let's see. If you wanted to step into my shoes and ask yourself something, because you've watched enough of these now,
Ew.
what would you want to know as a listener? And I know you're really good at asking questions, so don't punk out on yourself.
I know, right? I'm like, oh gosh.
You totally called me up last time with my brother.
I did, didn't I? And I was like, she's gonna get me. Like, as I was typing it, I was like,
Here we are.
like deleting it as I typed, and I was like, no, just go for it, just ask it, and she'll see it, and she'll either like scoot it over or she'll ask it.
Yeah.
It would be another hard question.
Yeah.
So, like, what I guess lies have I told myself, or what aspects of self, of ego, have I had to really confront and come to terms with in order to not to stop those cycles, but to really learn from them and to choose differently.
Okay. Boom.
So, one, to come to terms with my own flaws, and to not embrace them, but to accept them, to own them. I am who I am. I'm human. I am flawed. We all are. And that doesn't make me any less worthy of this life that I envision for myself, or less worthy of putting myself in positions to serve others, to help other people, to that I can be authentically me and still have value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. So if somebody was listening and they were like, yeah, great girl, like you can accept your flaws, but what about, and they're listing off all of their own flaws and
Mm-hmm.
they're like too hardcore flawed. Like, do you feel open enough to share maybe
I
some
mean,
of
I'm hardcore flawed. I mean, I'm single. I've had children out of wedlock. Not saying that that's a bad thing, but I mean, they were through relationships that I knew were never going to work. You know, I put myself in positions to make very difficult decisions that really could have had catastrophic results. We all have our own trauma. Some of us, it's more apparent and physical and visceral than others. Some of us, you know, we're hiders and we hide all of our stuff under a rug, and then we have to go home and deal with the dust and deal with the mess. So really look at those dark, dirty things. Some of the most beautiful aspects of life come out of really hard circumstances.
I literally just wrote about that the other day.
Did you really?
That post, not about my own, but I was talking about writing. You commented on it, and it was like,
oh yeah, that one.
Yeah, like some of our most profound pieces of writing come out of like the nastiest places. And so I want to ask you, like, did you use writing to help you with that, or how did you navigate those? Or if somebody wants to look into those like scary, dark places, and you know, how do you get support doing that?
I would, if you're a reader, find material that speaks to you in some way. For me, it's more than often poetry. I just love the way that it flows or doesn't, because poetry can be very choppy, but just that expression, that train of thought, and how that comes out on the page, and like when you read it out loud, how that, it's really beautiful for me. It's like prayer.
So like a book.
No, seriously, like I'll cry. I don't do real emotions. Like kids will cry at school and I'll be like, so and so's in the bathroom crying and I'm really uncomfortable. Can you go check on them? But at like my house,
yeah.
So if you're not at a place where you feel like you can look at yourself and really look in the mirror and back at the person that is gazing back at you, look at somebody else's junk. So like I've got some Rupi Kaur over here. Her stuff is really triggering for me. Sometimes I have to like bookmark and then go back to it. And then, the best thing that I've ever gotten, my friend Danielle gave me, and it's called The Poetry Remedy. And it's prescriptions for the heart, mind, and soul. And it's just like basically every really hard circumstance in life, there's like a poem that, no, seriously, that you can think of as like a prescription to help you process those feelings. So like anxiety, depression, emotional baggage, loneliness. I mean, none of that stuff is glamorous. That's the stuff that we never want to talk about. But seeing how somebody else has processed through that and then find a connection with myself, which will then lead to, you know, my own reflective practices, has been really good for me.
I like that. And then so, yeah, my go-to is always like a Jason Silva video. Dude like shares like his brain is just, and he's an Aquarius too, like me, and so I'm like, oh my god,
like automatically there's a connection.
I was like, dude, you are speaking the way that my brain works, but so much. But it's like I totally get it, and so, well, you know, I love,
like Pisces is like the complete spectrum of the zodiac, so like maybe that's why I'm so big with connection. You know, I'm like, ooh, Leo, okay.
So you're a Pisces.
Yes.
No wonder this makes so much. I've dated 2 Pisces in the past.
Oh man,
they always, and then I did. It was so. It was like, it's like I thought I was really deep, and then you meet a Pisces, and I know,
and it can be overwhelming. It's like a wave, right? So like we're either gonna crash into you, or it'll be like a little wake, and you're like, this person has no feelings.
Yeah, it's so crazy. Like just so Oh, there's just so much to process there for a Pisces all the time. And it's funny because you're not the first Pisces I've met that absolutely froths over poetry.
I mean, like you start mentioning poetry and I'm like, what? Hey.
I love that. I love all the ways we've talked about a whole bunch of different things. You know, you've talked about the importance of creativity, which I totally jive with. You've talked about using creativity as a doorway to explore yourself and to process your shit. You've talked a lot about connection and the importance of staying connected.
I think an important distinction to make though is that creativity doesn't necessarily have to be artistic.
More about that.
So no, seriously, like scientists are creative. Like there's a way about thinking about the body, how it works, and then what that informs us about how we live our lives or should. That's some creativity. My brain does not work that way. Math, I mean, all those equations and coming up with formulas and then finding answers from numbers that don't mean anything, that's some creative stuff right there. So creativity isn't necessarily artistic, but just what makes you burn up inside, what makes you light up, and what are you passionate about? And if you don't know, try some stuff, find it.
Yeah.
And through that, you're going to find your creative heartbeat.
Yeah, I love that because so one of my creative outlets, so I used to have a cleaning company before all of this.
Stop.
So
Are you serious?
um and I've been like scrubbing toilets since I was 6. Like I had a really clean house growing up, and yet I'm a piler, so I pile everything up and I know where everything is, and I'm a bit of a disaster. But then whenever I would get overwhelmed, I would, and like thank my mother for this, I would go create complete organization in my external world just to try to like manage what's going on inside.
What's going on inside?
Yeah, and so I had a cleaning company where I would take care of people's homes, and I would go into the biggest mess, like whether
hoarders?
Huh?
Like hoarders?
Yeah, there was some that were almost that bad. So I lived in a ski town. So when you're living in a ski town, I'd walk into houses that have like 25, 30 people living in them. And, you know, so I started charging a little bit different for the deep cleans because it was a lot of energy. And something that I realized in that is it's a very creative process for me to go and organize something. I'm also really good at math. That was my best subject in school.
Not
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I was also an art student, but and then, you know, culinary and stuff, so that's more creative. But the very dry black and white kind of organization is very much a creative outlet for me. And then what I've now looked back on in my cleaning company is people actually really just wanted me to come create a space for them. Mm-hmm. And now I hold space for people, but it's in a totally different way through breath work. And then also you look at my mala beads. I mean, they're pretty minimalist. They're flashy because there's lots of crystals and stuff, but the actual design of them is quite simple. And so I feel like there's that like kind of more masculine, like black and white kind of organization standpoint to this.
The beauty of simplicity.
Yeah, because like I would definitely describe myself as somebody who's wildly creative, but actually it starts from a real place of like organization and simplicity instead of like just, you know, because it's very much both those sides of being eccentric. Like even my clothes, like you look at what I'm wearing, I wear this dress, like I made it myself, but it's black and it's plain, and like a lot of the clothes I wear are plain because I have so much stuff on my body all the time. And so
you are the artwork.
So like thing, but I love what you say about, and I notice now that a lot of artists, there's different kinds of artists out there, and there are some that are very extravagant with the way they dress, but then there's a lot of artists who, like the poets, wear black, you know, that stereotype. And like I notice a lot of artists actually just wearing a lot of like plain colors, denim, you know, just very classic
And then
stuff.
their adornments are different. You know, yours is body art.
Yeah,
I
and
like the shinies, the baubles.
I love accessories. Like I love decorating. So, um, yeah, I love what you say about creativity, that it can come out in everywhere, um, and for people to like look within and just start something that's creative. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that.
My
So talk to me a little bit about this slow growth of your, not so much of your relationship, but you brought it up, and we talked about the way that you're entering 2021 a little bit more slowly. So to wrap up the episode, I really want to hear from you why you're approaching 2021 in a slower way.
Because I don't want to go back to the normal. It wasn't productive for me. It wasn't transformational for me. It didn't help me cycle through seasons of my life that felt natural. Yes, I did cycle through things, but it was very unorganic in a mechanical kind of way. And it didn't make me happy. And I don't want to feel that way anymore. So I'm making a choice to let things unfold. And I don't know where that's going to take me. I don't know where it's going to lead. But I do know that when I have answers, that the first place I'm looking for those is going to be within myself.
That's so powerful. Um, so powerful. Like, quoting you that, probably titling the episode that. Normal.
It's not happening and you can't make me do it.
Yeah, I love that, because, you know, I think there's a lot of people out there, and times I know probably you've felt this and I've felt this, where you think about a time before when things were better. And pre-corona, pre-COVID, we all did that, you know, always thinking about a time before that was better that's not now, and a time in the future that could be better that's not now. And I think it's really powerful for you to admit that, yeah, things were great, but I actually don't want to go back to normal. And also the level of acceptance that, you know, this pandemic, you know, just like it wasn't going anywhere after spring break, it's not going anywhere right now either. And really,
Exactly. Like we're still mucking through the same stuff. And we're
yeah,
not really going to have anything change or be different until, you know, there's some scientific data behind vaccines and how they work, and how, you know, if people even want to put that into their body. It's like, it's all about freedom and choice. Okay. The natural consequences of not taking care of your state and taking care of your community, we're living it.
yeah, yeah, it's super profound. And um, for somebody who hasn't accepted, doesn't want to accept, and is resistant, just feeling tight and resistant, can you share something that helped you to kind of, not that you've found inner peace, obviously every hour is a different story, but can you share like how, just something about acceptance that may help?
So, when we were chatting before, on the back end, I love when you say that. And I was kind of preparing myself for this chat. I pulled an affirmation card, and it says, "I release the pressure to be perfect."
Oh yeah.
And that's my message. Live
So
your life however you want to do it, but keep everybody else out of it. Like, what is going to make you happy? If it's going back to normal, the way that things were before, do it. Float your boat, you know, fly your freak flag, do whatever, but do it on your own terms.
I love that. And just the element that really wraps it up nicely, because We've talked about the bombarded aspect of everything that we are consuming all the time and how overwhelming that can feel. And then this time of year in particular, being bombarded with all the new courses and the new resolutions. And I'm not making a New Year's resolution and all these strong opinions, and really just to, like a horse with blinders, you know, and really listen to that. Like for me, again, I really believe in that. Like, no, I'm not going to ignore the world, but I'm going to go in here for a second until it makes sense to me. And then I'm going to like let it in. It's like at the end of
Exactly. And
spiritual.
then you go
Yeah.
out and you're like, oh, this class over here is in perfect alignment. And maybe it's not even perfect alignment. Like jungle dance last night, I was like, I don't know what Kayla's got me doing. I really don't know about this. But man, it felt good, you know? And I'm glad I did that last night, because then it prepared me for my crazy day today, and then really helped me to get into this space for this conversation. So try the things. If they work, wonderful. If they don't, they don't. Move on to the next thing.
Yeah, I love that. And we mentioned it at the end of Jungle Dance. I don't know if you had already been putting Harper to bed or not, but in Indonesia, they have this saying, specifically more in Lombok, but there's like this little like affirmation sign everywhere, because they love their affirmation signs here. Never try, never know.
Ooh, I like that. And it totally sounds like something somebody's sassy grandma would say, you know?
Yeah. Because like you go to the islands, and on the islands off of Lombok, like some people kind of like just do mushrooms there and, you know, go on their own magical adventures or whatever. But it's like you're on this little island, there's no cars, there's a bicycle. It's like got this little magical kind of air to it.
Otherworldly feel.
Yeah. And like little dream catchers hanging from the trees and whatever. And it's like, never try, never know. And it's so cheeky because it can be interpreted to like so many things. But
oh, I like that. I'm going to write that down. It's going to go in the journal.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for just, having an off the cuff conversation. And I mean, we talked about a whole bunch of stuff, really. There was no planned direction. And I love
that, because then we could really explore what came up, what felt right.
Yeah. Cool. And I love that. And so for anybody listening or that's going to listen later, really just to sit with yourself after this conversation and listen to what is it that you want for 2021, and where's that, you know, how are you going to walk that path, and do you even need to do something to walk that path, you know? Because I've got my opinion, you've got your opinion. We both like slow, we vibe on that. There's going to be people that love fast and are going to build empires, and that's going to be cool too. There's going to be people in the middle that do nothing, and that's cool too. And then there's going to be everybody in between, you know? And so at the end of
I would say, ask yourself some questions. Give yourself some truthful answers. And if you don't have them right away, sit on it or keep asking. And you're either gonna come at it really hard and fast, or your pace is gonna be a little bit different. And just do what feels right for you, or don't. Do or don't.
Yeah, I love that. I love the listening to kind of like the true north within. So awesome, buddy. Well,
thank you for this chat. I loved it.
Thanks for kicking off the new year for us. And if anybody wants to connect with Dana outside of this, they can hop onto her Makers by Design to, I think, what do you got featured on that? Because that's the idea that's still manifesting.
So still manifesting right now, for my own selfish reasons. The first aspect of that will be writing. It'll be, people maybe with some ideas for their own personal projects, and us kind of chatting through what that process could look like, and coming up with some tangible outcomes that they can further on their own. But then it also looks like a space for creators, and then a community space where, we've all got different things going on, and how can we support each other in that? So
I love that. And then if you want to dig into her personal life, you can go to
you can totally spy on me.
Totally come spy on you and request to be your friend.
And I'll either say yes. Actually, everybody you can follow, but I mean, if the body says no, then I really do like having conversation, though. I do.
Yeah. Yeah. So for anybody that's really liked any of this, just reach out directly and stay tuned and listen deeply within. And yeah, I just want to say thanks.
Thank you so much.
Cool.
Have a wonderful day.
Okay. Have a good night.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye, buddy.
Bye.